3 sinister true tales of terrifying neighbors, revealed secrets that haunt and curse lives. In the sleepy suburbs of the Midwest, where every lawn is perfectly trimmed and every porch swing sways in hollow tranquility, an unearthly horror lurks just behind closed doors. Lisa, a determined 30-something mother, stirs a ghostly sensation with each sunset. The shadows grow long and eerie, whispering secrets from the neighboring house, that of Mr. Caldwell. He smiles and waves, but beyond his rehearsed friendliness, something sinister pulses. As her husband trudges off to his graveyard shift, the weight of dark isolation descends upon Lisa and her 2 children, Emma and Jake. Each night, the silence feels increasingly oppressive, wrapping around her like a heavy shroud, echoed by the sinister thuds that jolt through their shared wall. One blistering summer eve, Lisa is knee-deep in bedtime chaos, pajamas here, bedtime stories there, when those thuds crash once more. It's like a heartbeat pulsing through the walls, resonating with a fear she can't pinpoint. Mr. Caldwell, with his once comforting presence, transforms into an enigma. A flickering porch light sings ominously with the rhythm next door, feeding the dread in her stomach. Gathering up stray toys, Lisa finds misaddressed packages on her doorstep, strange, unclaimed parcels that seem to shadow her every move, each one unnervingly heavier than the last. Intrigued, yet unsettled, Lisa dives into the neighborhood's whispers, strange occurrences, lost pets, and a chilling absence of children in Caldwell's life. Panic creeps into her bones. Could the perfect neighbor hide something dark beneath his genial mask? Each visit to the police station leaves her feeling hollow, her concerns brushed aside like tumbleweeds. Little do they know. At home, Emma and Jake beam innocently, pleading for ice cream with their charming neighbor, blissfully unaware of the lurking specter in their midst. Lisa fights to shield her children from this dark shadow. They have no idea how deep the rabbit hole goes. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Days bleed into weeks. Shadows seem to stretch longer, cloaking her home in dread. The whispers about Mr. Caldwell morph from insidious spot to terror. She uncovers dark tales buried beneath well-tended hedges, curses of the Caldwell family, linked to tragic feuds and buried secrets that feed on angst.
Each thud against the wall ignites cold sweat on her brow until she feels traps closing around her sanity. Then, on one fateful night, a power outage plunges everything into chaos. Heart racing, she strains to hear the familiar thump outside, thicker now, louder than before. Heart pounding, she peeks through the curtains to find Mr. Caldwell standing on his porch, the flickering light casting an unearthly glow, his eyes locked onto hers, cold and unblinking. Emma and Jake, wide-eyed with fascination, call out to him. Lisa's instincts scream at her to flee, to take her children and run. But what if confronting the man everyone trusts reveals a truth darker than the midnight sky? As the weight of reality sinks in, a rustling in the bushes breaks the silence, sending a shiver down her spine. What awaits her beyond the shadows? She must uncover the truth before it's too late. But what darkness do her neighbors hold? The tension hangs in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and suffocating. Lisa grips the curtain, her breath hitching at the sight of Mr. Caldwell's unyielding gaze, a predator watching its prey. She wants to pull her children back, shield them from this suffocating dread, but there's a part of her that feels rooted in place. "What's the matter, Mom?" Emma asks, tilting her little head, confusion knitting her brow. Lisa forces a smile, but it feels like a clown mask stretched across her face. She turns, guiding her kids away from the window, muttering something to distract them. "Let's do something fun. How about a game?" The kids, oblivious, chirp excitedly, and her heart aches at their innocence. They deserve bubbles and laughter, not the undercurrents of something vile that twist in their neighborhood. What terror blooms in the spaces between their laughter. But Lisa can't ignore that thud that resonates in her bones. She settles on the floor, surrounded by toys, yet her mind drifts to Mr. Caldwell, living alone in that imposing house. What lurks in the dark corners of his dwelling? The power returns with a flicker, throwing the room back into illumination, and with it the clamor of mundane sounds. Still, her senses remain heightened, on edge. Every creak of the floorboards draws her attention. Every movement of the wind coils around her throat like a noose. As darkness descends a few hours later, Lisa tucks her children into bed. She reads a story, but her mind drifts. The whispers from the neighborhood echo in her ears, accusations of the past knitting together into a haunting canvas. Curses of the Caldwell family linger like storm clouds. What had they done to draw darkness to their doorsteps? Just as she turns off the lights, a cantankerous knock reverberates through the walls. Lisa's heart races, a wild drum of fear. Her instincts scream to stay still, but curiosity drags her closer to the source, that sinister wall shared with Mr. Caldwell. "Mom?" Jake's sleepy voice pierces the silence, shaking her from her trance.
"Just a minute, Sweet Pea." She forces calm, quietly tiptoeing to the wall. The thuds come again, louder this time, a rhythmic pounding. It pulses like an engine ready to explode. She brings her ear close, heart hammering, and as she listens, what feels like a distant muffled voice carries through. Her blood runs cold. What could he possibly be doing? Every instinct tells her to call for help, but the thought of having the police turn up at her door and brushing her fears aside yet again leaves her feeling helpless. Just as she turns to leave, the front door creaks open, revealing a figure standing just outside. Mr. Caldwell. "Lisa." He calls her name, an unsettling grin spreading across his face. "I brought you something." Her body locks in place. "What do you want?" "I want to show you," he says, a chill slipping into his words. "Your children need to see what's down there, in the basement." The basement? Lisa's blood runs cold. She had never thought to consider what lay beneath, and for a split second, she considers the packages piled up on her doorstep, unclaimed and heavy with dread. What had been sent to her door, and what were they truly meant for? Fear tightens its grip on her as she realizes, what if the truth lurking behind that door is darker than even her nightmares? "Why?" she whispers, backing away with instinctual caution, her thoughts racing. "Because," he leans closer, "I think they'd like to play." The chilling enticement pulls at her, and she nearly stumbles. Darkness beckons, and she knows she must uncover what's truly buried there. But who can she trust when the monster wears the face of a neighbor? Questions whirl in her mind. Terror coils tightly around her heart. As she reaches for her phone, the lights flicker, then die, plunging the world into inky blackness. What truth will be uncovered as fear unravels the tapestry of safety woven in her neighborhood? With silence wrapping around her like a shroud, she knows time is slipping through her fingers. The darkness felt thick and suffocating, each heartbeat echoing loud in Lisa's ears. She fumbled for her phone, praying for a glimmer of light, but the screen remained dark, unyielding against the pitch black surrounding her. With every second that passed, Mr. Caldwell's words warmed deeper into her mind, coiling around her thoughts like a snake ready to strike. They'd like to play. What kind of game could he possibly mean? An ice cube slithered down her spine as she thought about her children. They were so innocent. Did he see them as pawns in some twisted game? "Mom?" Emma's voice rang out, cutting through the silence like glass shattering. Lisa's heart leapt, fueled by fear. "I'm here, baby," she called back, her voice wavering. She peered into the darkness, trying to gather the courage to face whatever had just entered her life. The silence that followed felt almost mocking, an affirmation of her worst fears. "I can't see."
Jake's wail curled around her, and she was abruptly yanked away from her thoughts, her resolve hardening. Every mother instinct screamed for her to protect them from whatever horror Mr. Caldwell might unleash. "Stay in bed! I'm coming!" she shouted, moving slowly toward the children's room. As she stepped down the hallway, she noticed the shadows elongating, morphing into ghastly shapes that seemed to sway and dance. She forced her eyes ahead, unwilling to lose herself to the paranoia that clawed at the edges of her sanity. She reached the children's room and hurried inside, quickly shutting the door behind her. The cloying darkness had followed her, stretching shadows over every toy and book. Emma and Jake sat up, wide-eyed, completely unaware of the monster lurking just outside their walls. For a moment, Lisa reveled in the familiar sight of her children. But then the memories came crashing back. The packages circling her door, the thuds from the wall. What if this wasn't just a game? "Mom, where's the light?" Emma's voice trembled, intermingled with fear. Lisa wrapped her arms tightly around them, feeling their warmth against the icy grip of terror clawing at her heart. Just hold on," she whispered, longing for the safety of the daylight. "It's going to be okay." But deep down, she knew she was lying. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the direction of Mr. Caldwell's house. It was terrifying enough to send the kids scuttling closer to her. There was no mistaking it. A guttural voice seeped through the walls, fragments twisted and tainted with rage. "You can't keep hiding from me, Lisa. You can't run from the truth forever." Panic surged through her veins. Every instinct told her to flee, to take her children and run far away from this nightmare. But where could she go when the terror lurked in every corner? The world outside felt like a vast expanse of uncertainty, and Mr. Caldwell was the storm brewing just beyond. "Mom, who is that?" Jake whispered, the innocence in his tone clashing violently with the malevolence that dripped from Caldwell's voice. Just someone who wants to play," she murmured, the line between truth and lie blurring harshly. At that moment, a frantic knocking began, pounding violently against the front door, each bang echoing like a death knell. It reverberated in her bones, setting her heart on fire. The children whimpered, clinging tighter against her. With each horrifying knock, the reality settled in. Whatever this truly was, it was coming for them, and she had no idea how to stop it. An overwhelming dread settled deep within her. As the knocking grew more insistent, she became acutely aware of the small window in her children's room. Could they escape? The thought sent a bolt of adrenaline surging through her. "I need you two to stay very quiet," she whispered. "I'll be right back." Lisa's heart raced, but this time, fear guided her instead of paralyzing her.
She promised herself that she wouldn't let anything happen to them. Before she headed for the window, she hesitated, turning back just long enough to look at Emma and Jake. Their faces were pale, shadows of innocence worn thin by fear. "Whatever happens, don't leave this room," she urged, her voice barely above a whisper. They nodded, and she felt a rush of resolve surge within her. She reached the window and planned her next move. But just as she ready to put her plan into action, a final terror-fueled thought gripped her. What if this wasn't just about her? What if this was all just the beginning? She could feel her pulse race, racing to unearth the truth buried beneath the darkness. With one last glance at her children, she pushed the window open, plunging into the unknown. But as the sounds of chaos echoed behind her, she couldn't shake the growing dread in her gut. What hidden truth would she unearth next? And would the children even be safe when she returned? The air was heavy as Lisa clambered out of the window, her heart thumping in her chest. She felt a moment of panic at the thought of leaving the children, but the pounding at the front door was relentless. She couldn't let him in. That dark voice from Mr. Caldwell echoed in her mind, taunting her, reminding her of the game he was playing. The ground was damp beneath her feet, the coolness seeping through her shoes. She crouched low, heart racing, willing herself to remain silent. The world outside was eerily quiet, almost too quiet, as if the darkness itself was holding its breath. Shadows twisted around her, every rustle of leaves igniting her fear. "Where do I go?" she thought frantically. Mr. Caldwell's house loomed nearby, its dark figure outlined against the faint glow of the moon. That was where the chaos had come from. Was the answer lurking within? Taking a deep breath, she edged toward the fence separating her yard from Caldwell's. Each step felt like it could be her last, as if the night itself would swallow her whole. The houses around her felt like sentinels, watching, judging, but providing no comfort. They too were part of this sinister tapestry. Just as she reached the fence, a shadow flitted just beyond the edge of her vision. Lisa froze. It moved closer, and she squinted into the darkness, desperate to discern what it was. A chill curled up her spine. Was it just a trick of her imagination, or was something watching her from the gloom? The air shifted as she crouched behind the fence, her senses heightened. Or was it more than just a shift? "It's just a game," she remembered Mr. Caldwell's sinister words, a frigid reminder that they were still in play. Gathering her courage, she moved to peek around the fence. On the porch of Caldwell's house, shadowy figures flickered like wicked silhouettes, their elongating limbs twisting unnaturally in the dim light. The guttural voice rose again, seething with agitation. "Do you hear them, Lisa?" "They're calling for you. Come out and play." Fury and fear mingled in her chest. Those were her children he was talking about. As quickly as her eyes adjusted to the shadows, they caught movement. Her children peering from the window, fear etched across their innocent faces. "Mom!" Jake's soft cry was painfully audible. "Stay back," she hissed, panic slipping into her voice. They had to stay hidden. The tableau around her sharpened. Mr. Caldwell moved from the shadows, a menacing figure, eyes glinting in the darkness. He lifted a rusted, bloodied toy, a doll, but not just any doll. It was Emma's. "I found something that belongs to you," he sang, a cruel mockery of a lullaby, swaying slightly as he cradled the doll. The sight made bile rise in Lisa's throat. "No!" It was a shriek, a primal scream that was as much for her children as for the sheer horror of the situation. But something was off. The shapes near Caldwell started to shift, writhing and coiling. They weren't human. Not entirely. Lisa squinted harder, and dread pooled in her gut. They were ghostly figures, children's faces twisted in agony, whispering, pleading for help. Help us, Lisa," they chanted in hushed, echoed tones. No, this can't be happening. Her breath quickened, an almost disbelieving, desperate mantra against the encroaching terror gripping her heart. Just then, Mr. Caldwell turned sharply, his dark eyes locking onto hers, the grin on his face growing, spreading like a storm across his features. "Will you join them? Will you play?" Sweat trickled down her back. Her instincts screamed at her to run, to save her children. But the arrival of a chilling truth flashed through her thoughts. If she entered that house, into his twisted game, would there be a way back? The weight of her dilemma crushed her chest. Around her the ghostly figures wailed, calling for help, begging for release. They looked so much like the children she loved. And just as terrifying, it felt like they were pulling her in, inch by inch. Lisa had to choose. Would she confront the nightmare and risk everything, or would she abandon those still caught in the darkness? "Mom!" Emma's fearful call jolted her back, the once whimpering echo now wrapping around her heart like a vice. As the figures advanced and Caldwell's laughter echoed through the night, the decision loomed like a storm cloud. Could she fight? Or was she too late? She took a breath, steeling herself for what was to come, but just as she moved to back away, a sudden crash shattered the stillness nearby, and something dark and twisted stepped out from Caldwell's shadow. What was coming for her now would determine everything. Would she flee or face the growing horror Sean? Lisa stumbled backward, her heart hammering against her ribcage. The figure that emerged from Caldwell's shadow was not fully formed, twisting and shifting in a way that made her stomach flip.
It was neither a child nor an adult, just a dark mass dripping with an unsettling energy. For a moment it seemed to hover, as if contemplating her presence, and she was frozen in place. The laughter from Mr. Caldwell cut through the night, cruel and mocking. "Do you see what I have unleashed? Isn't it beautiful?" He gestured widely, and the creature writhed, eyes glowing a deep, menacing red. Leave my children alone!" Panic surged through her as she shouted the words, but they felt like whispers against the cacophony of Caldwell's delight. The air thickened further, wrapping around her like a vice, squeezing out her courage. She glanced back at the window, where Jake and Emma still huddled, their faces ghostly pale. In that split second, their eyes locked onto hers, silent pleas spilling from their terrified gazes. There was desperation there that gave her strength. She couldn't leave them. Rallying her courage, she stepped forward, uneasy but defiant. "I'm coming for you!" she shouted, her voice steadier than she felt. But even as she spoke, she felt the ground tremor beneath her, a ripple of fear that clawed at her heart. "Too late," Caldwell crooned, reveling in her torment. He waved the bloody doll as if it were an offering. "They've already joined the game. Can't you hear their laughter?" The shadows behind him pulsed, feeding off her dread as she struggled to comprehend his twisted words. "Just a distraction. It's a trick," she hissed to herself, attempting to drown out the cries of the ghostly figures. But they were weaving through her mind, echoing like a haunting lullaby, merging with her own fear. "Help us! Help us!" "Stop!" she screamed, willing herself to remain anchored in reality. She focused on Caldwell instead, realizing that the source of this nightmare was him. If she could distract him, perhaps she could buy time.
What do you want? Why our family?" His grin widened, the darkness around him swirling with excitement. "Your children hold the key, Lisa. Their innocence, it amplifies the game." He stepped closer, the rusty toy held high, and to her horror, she noticed something else. A series of small, torn photographs trailing behind him, each one showing a family eerily similar to hers. "Watch as I gather them all, Lisa," Caldwell cawed, waving the doll again. "Soon this neighborhood will be my playground." "Not if I can help it." Adrenaline surged, and with a sudden thought, she shouted, "You're just a coward hiding behind this creeping darkness. You think you can take my children? Over my dead body!" Caldwell's expression faltered for a moment, and she seized the chance to sprint towards his house. She felt the air crackle with energy, and the figures began drifting closer, almost reaching out to her. "Help us! You have to help us!" Their wails pierced the oppressive night, hollow echoes of regret and despair. Lisa turned sharply, her mind racing. There had to be something, some way to break this cycle.
A hidden truth, a forgotten weakness that she could exploit. A glimpse of a dusty old book appeared in her mind. Her grandmother had once spoken of a way to confront evil, to bind it. "Stay strong, guys," she called back to the children, though doubt gnawed at her like the swirling shadows. As she pressed forward, the atmosphere grew heavier. She could feel Mr. Caldwell's sinister intent chasing her, an invisible weight urging her to falter. But she was close now. She could taste it. The threshold of his home loomed ahead, darkness spilling out like a thick fog, inviting her in but threatening to consume her. Just as she reached the door, it slammed open, revealing a monstrous shadow behind. Its grotesque form mirrored the children's haunted faces, and she realized Caldwell's creatures were once just like them. In her gut rose an intense urgency. "I've got to beat him at his own game," she thought, stepping inside, ready to confront whatever awaited her, a twisted world where the rules were made to be broken. She felt a sudden chill sweep through her. Would standing up to him mean embracing the darkness, or could she unearth the strength to turn it back? As she crossed the threshold, a thunderous roar erupted from behind her. The shadows lunged. With chaos swirling all around, Lisa knew the final play had begun, and there was no turning back. What would she release in order to save her children? The door slammed shut behind her, echoing like a thunderclap, sealing Lisa in the darkness of Caldwell's lair. Instantly, the strangled cries of the other children seemed to grow louder, each pitiful scream slicing through the suffocating silence. Shadows coiled around her feet, crawling like insects, urging her to retreat. She fought the urge to scream, the weight of despair pressing down on her chest. Caldwell's laughter bounced off the walls, hollow and vicious. "Welcome home, Lisa." His voice dripped with mockery, filled with a sick kind of glee. She had stepped into a haunting echo of her own world, but all warmth and light had vanished. The living room that once seemed innocuous was now a twisted display of grotesque art, images of joy distorted into something sinister. Wooden dolls, their eyes glossed over in a permanent glaze, hung from the ceiling, swaying like pendulums in an unseen breeze. With every step deeper into the darkness, Lisa could feel the air grow colder, charged with an electric anticipation. The shadows flickered, drawing closer to her, brushing against her as if they were alive. With every whisper they offered, reality began to blur. Was she really in her children's world, or was this a deception conjured by Caldwell's sick imagination? "Look closer," Caldwell sang, stepping out from behind a curtain of filth. The doll hung from his hand, its body stained with remnants of shadows. "Do you see what you are? Just another pawn in my game." Lisa swallowed hard, her heart racing. This was it. She had to remain focused. "What happened to all of them? Why are you doing this?" she shouted back, her voice cracking under the strain. Caldwell's expression darkened. "Their joy was too bright. I needed them to play in the dark, just like you will." Before she could respond, the dolls above her began to giggle in unison, a cacophony of childlike laughter warped by despair. The sound clawed at her sanity, reminding her of Jake and Emma's soft voices. "Mommy, help us!" "Enough!" Lisa shouted, seeking the strength within. She scanned the room, her eyes landing on the dusty corner where an ancient book sat on an altar, covered in cobwebs. Could it be the one her grandmother mentioned? The one that held the secrets to binding evil? Hope flickered in her chest. If she could reach it, maybe she could turn the tide. "I'm not afraid of you," she yelled at Caldwell, stepping onto the dark carpet that began to pulse beneath her feet. Shadows writhed, trying to pull her down into a pit of despair, but she forced herself forward, pushing through the suffocating darkness. But Caldwell sensed her movement. With a guttural growl, he lunged, the shadows erupting around him, taking shape, forming ghastly faces that howled in fury. The mass of darkness surged toward her, and she felt a bone-chilling dread wash over her. "Get away from me!" she screamed, throwing her arms up in defense, and stumbled into a heavy wooden table. She steadied herself, diving toward the book. Caldwell's laughter echoed through the room, a haunting melody that shook her bones. "They'll never let you go. Once darkness claims you, it holds on forever." Her fingers brushed the cover of the book, and she could feel the energy pulse through her, a heartbeat, wild and chaotic. It felt alive, full of agony and strength. She gripped it tightly, hoping it could give her the power to break Caldwell's grip. But in that moment, an icy blast of air washed over her, and Lisa felt weightless as Caldwell closed in, a storm of shadows spreading like a dark tide toward the children's cries. "Where are you, Mommy?" Jake's voice pierced the chaos, clear and desperate. "Hold on!" she shouted back, but would it be enough? The dark energy fizzled around her. In that moment, Lisa realized she had to decide. Embrace the shadows to save her children, or fight back against the very darkness that threatened to consume her? The ground beneath her began to quake as the shadows surged again. Would the book offer salvation or doom? What would she unleash if she chose wrong? The shadows lunged, swirling dangerously around her body, biting at her ankles like a pack of ravenous dogs. The book pulsed with an otherworldly warmth in her hands, a stark contrast to the icy tendrils grasping at her spirit. "You think that book can help you?" Caldwell's voice dripped with derision, echoing in the chamber like a death knell. "It will only serve to chain you to this darkness." Panic surged within her, but she couldn't afford to falter now.
She twisted the book open, the pages flipping wildly, whispering secrets she had never meant to know. Even the shadows paused, skirting away as if fearing what lay inside. Words leapt out at her, incantations, warnings, desperate cries. "No! No!" She grasped the lightning-touched edges of the pages, forcing her mind to focus on a single incantation. "By the light that flickers in the dark, by the joy that cannot be snuffed," she whispered, her voice shaky but fierce. She felt the shadows recoil, a shriek weaving through them, desperate to quiet her rising hope. "I bind you! I bind you!" With each repetition, the shadows writhed, contorting into grotesque shapes, faces of anguished children who had once played in that same warmth. The chilling realization hit her. Caldwell fed off their fears, their pain. For every voice it consumed, it grew stronger, and those she loved were still trapped in its clutches. "Stop it!" Caldwell howled, his face twisting in rage, the shadows crashing into him with renewed ferocity. "You think you can banish me? Pathetic! You'll regret this!" Her heart raced as the room began to tremble, the walls vibrating like they were alive. Lisa gritted her teeth and channeled her fear into the words, focusing on Jake and Emma's faces, their laughter echoing in her mind, piercing through the oppressive darkness surrounding her. "I am not afraid of you!" Suddenly, the book trembled in her grasp, the spell taking hold. A blinding light erupted from its pages, illuminating the room in radiant fury. Shadows screeched, bursting in all directions, dissolving into nothingness. Caldwell's form flickered, desperation etched across his features. "You can't do this!" he screamed, the mask of darkness slipping further away. But as the light enveloped her, it also revealed the dark remnants binding the children, their forms now visible, ghostly and frail as they clawed at the umbral chains wrapped around them. The sight stole her breath. "Jake! Emma!" she called out, her heart shattering at their hollow-eyed expressions. "Mommy!" they cried in unison, their voices mingling in tortured harmony. She could see their tiny hands stretched out, desperate, reaching through a veil of shadows, pleading for salvation. "Don't worry, I'll save you!" she shouted, her voice rising above the tumultuous cries of ghostly children and Caldwell's maddened fury. She concentrated, channeling all her love, all her hopes into the incantation. The shadows convulsed like a wounded beast, howling as if they could sense the shift of power. Walls trembled, and Lisa's knees buckled, each syllable harder to utter beneath the weight of their sorrow. "My children, come back to me!"
At that moment, a roar of fury erupted from Caldwell as he lunged toward her, the very embodiment of rage and despair, a final attempt to snatch victory from her grasp. The light from the book pulsed brighter, almost blinding, but she felt it reach for Jake and Emma. Just when it seemed the darkness might consume her, a fragment of light shot out, severing Caldwell's grasp on the shadows. The children's cries grew stronger, weaving their own spirit into the chant, infusing it with hope. "Mommy, we're coming!" And then darkness closed in again, all-consuming, intense, more profound than before. The book slipped from her grasp as she cried out, arms reaching high, willing their return. Was it hope, or a final descent into madness? Smoke swirled in a blistering tempest, enfolding Lisa as the world around her dissolved into chaos, and a chilling laughter echoed inside her mind. Who would emerge when it cleared? What remained of her family, if anything at all? The darkness swallowed her whole, a suffocating blanket that left no trace of the blinding light, no sound but the distant echoes of her children's cries. Lisa gasped, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest, each beat echoing in the vast emptiness around her. She was alone, or so she thought. Shapes began to materialize from the unseen, each one a flicker of memory, a whisper of despair. Their faces flickered in and out of her vision, looking like her children but twisted, distorted versions that showed nothing but fear. "Mommy," they screamed. The childish lilt turned into an urgent wail. "Help us!" Her breath quickened. Was this the price of her spell? A cruel joke from Caldwell meant to torment her? She stretched her hands out, desperate to grasp any form of warmth. "Jake! Emma!" Her voice shattered against the blackness, swallowed by the void. Then, amidst the terror, a familiar sensation gripped her, cold fingers curling around her wrists, tightening with icy resolve. "You thought you could escape? You thought I would let them go that easily?" It was Caldwell, his presence a malevolent force that twisted the very air. "You have no power here," she cried. "I'll find them. I'll save them." But as she spoke, the laughter returned, venomous and laced with mockery. "Power? You think you possess power? You're just a mortal, clinging to a fading dream." A flicker of light sparked in the shadows, not the blinding fury from the book, but a single dim glow. It pulsed weakly, yet Lisa felt an inexplicable pull toward it. It was hope, a fragile ember in an ocean of despair. She steadied herself against the encroaching darkness and began moving toward it, her heart pounding with renewed purpose. Caldwell's laughter darkened, filling her with ice as he shouted, "You'll never reach it. All you'll find is your grave." But Lisa didn't falter. She pushed against the creeping shadows, each step a battle, the shadows clawing at her will. "I will not let you take them. I will not be chained." The glowing light grew, illuminating figures trapped in a swirling mass of grief and fear. They were her children, trapped in the nightmare, their faces growing clearer, pleading silently for their mother. "Help us, Mommy!"
They mouthed, words slipping through the veil like fading smoke. "I'm coming," she cried, her voice desperate and resolute. Just beyond that light she could almost reach them, feel their warmth. But the shadows were relentless, their icy breath threatening to pull her back into despair. And just as she thought she was gaining ground, a shadow lunged at her, wrapping around her like a serpent, squeezing the breath from her lungs. "Give in. You cannot fight what's already yours." Caldwell's voice slithered into her mind like liquid ice. The knot around her tightened, choking her spirit. "No, I won't surrender." With a scream that echoed through the emptiness, she grasped the shard of light in her heart, a flicker of her love for her children, and surged forward, breaking through the shadows. The light exploded, illuminating the chamber, but when it faded, darkness still lingered. The shadows had shifted, twisting into something swift, a ravenous beast fueled by despair. They bared sharp teeth, closing in on her. "No!" she shouted, backing away. She needed to think, to fight. "What do I have to do?" As she turned, the object of her salvation emerged, the book. It lay abandoned, just beyond her reach, its pages flowering in phantom winds. But would it still have the power to save them? Dread coursed through her. She could lose it all within a heartbeat. Could she wield the magic once more? Or had Caldwell stripped away every chance? The shadows snarled, maddened by her hesitation. She turned slowly to the grim beast closing in, the air thick with malevolence, feeling the chilling grip closing around her heart. "Mommy, please." Could she defy fate? could she snatch hope from the jaws of despair? The shadows lunged, and she prepared to fight for her family's lives, praying they weren't lost forever in the darkness. Did the book still hold the key? And how much darkness could she face before it consumed her? The shadows lunged, desperate to crush her spirit. The monstrous shapes writhed and twisted, their grotesque forms shifting as if they were alive, driven by a hunger. Lisa's heart raced, pumping pure terror through her veins. She could feel it, a weight pressing down on her, suffocating, urging her to surrender. But she couldn't, not now, not when every fiber of her being screamed for her children. They were close, so close, but the darkness around her was thick, almost tangible, like a shroud ready to ensnare her completely. I could see the glint of the book, its spine cracked and faded, shining with that faint illumination. With all her determination, she propelled herself towards it, each step feeling like wading through a pool of gelatin. The shadows snapped at her heels, their taunts echoing like the whispers of lost souls. "You'll never escape." "No," the word exploded from her lips. I felt the surge of a fierce protectiveness that shattered her fear. "I will not let you keep them. I will not let you win." As she lunged for the book, a wave of shadows swallowed her whole. The cold clawed at her thoughts, threatening to drown her. But she pushed back, summoning every shred of willpower she had left. She could almost taste the bitter air, the sharp tang of desperation turning stale in her throat. Her fingers brushed the pages of the book, sending a pulse of energy surging through her. It was all too familiar. Memories flooded back, gathering the strength of the earth, the whispers of ancient spells, each rising to the forefront of her mind. She was not without power, she just had to remember. Fingers trembling, she opened the book, its pages fluttering violently as if a storm swept through them. Dark ink twisted into symbols and words that glowed with urgency. "Hear me, forces of the bleak, eyes of the night, grant me strength." The shadows recoiled for a moment, as if caught in a sudden gale. Lisa could feel the weight of their hatred, the biting cold retreating just a bit. The book's energy coursed through her, igniting her spirit like a wildfire, and she stood taller. She couldn't give in, not when her children's lives hung in the balance. The shadows hissed, malice dripping from their forms. "Foolish woman, you think you can wield what you do not understand?" But she would try. Rallying her courage, she spoke the words that surged in her mind, the verses echoing with power. The shadows writhed, a cacophony of snarls and cries filling her ears. "By the light of my love, by the strength of a mother, I command you to release them." With each word, the room trembled, a crack of light breaking through the oppressive dark. The shadows howled, darting back as if stung. She felt their anger, their venomous rage, but also a crack in their hold. "Mommy!" A clear voice burst through the chaos, and in an instant she could see them, Jake and Emma, standing just beyond the grasp of the darkness, their faces pale but alive with determination. "Help us!" The intensity surged within her. She had to protect them. With her heart beating like a drum, she channeled every ounce of pain and love into the words, a surge of raw magic erupting from her lips. The darkness screamed, a terrible sound that echoed and reverberated around her, twisting like a tornado. Lisa braced against it, holding fast, concentrating on the vision of her children. She saw their faces, their laughter ripping through the veil of despair. "I will save you!" The shadows exploded outward, enveloping her in a storm of darkness and light, blinding her momentarily. Lisa closed her eyes, focusing on the warmth of her children, if she could endure just a moment longer. When she opened them again, the colors around her shifted. The room no longer felt forbidding, but familiar, yet tinged with an uncanny dizziness, the air thick with a lingering sense of impending dread. "Are you okay?" Jake's voice brought her back, but something quaked in her heart. The glimmer of reality felt like shifting sand beneath her feet. "I think so," she replied, bewildered. But there was an undercurrent she couldn't shake. Something felt wrong. And then she noticed it. The shadows had not vanished. They simply lurked at the edges of the room, waiting, watching. Caldwell's laughter echoed faintly in our ears, a chilling reminder. Victory had not yet been claimed. "Mommy?" Emma's eyes, wide with inquiry, fluttered between the light and the dark. "Are we safe now?" Lisa's heart dropped. What if they weren't?
What if the darkness was merely biding its time for the moment to strike? As dread settled back into her gut, she clenched her hands, feeling the pulse of the book's magic within her. But could she wield it again, or would the shadows rise anew? The question hung ominously in the air, whispering of battles yet to come, and the looming specter of despair waited patiently for its chance to reclaim what it had lost. The room brightened slowly, glowing with an ethereal light that coated every corner, dispelling the shadows that lingered like a bad dream. Lisa tried to catch her breath, the weight of what had just transpired pressing hard against her chest. The book lay cradled in her arms, its warmth pulsating against her skin like a heartbeat, as if awakening to a purpose. "Mommy?" Emma's voice brought Lisa fully back to reality, and she dropped to her knees to gather her children into her embrace. Their warmth seeped into her, chasing away the lingering chill of their brushes with terror. "We're safe," she whispered, the words wrapping around the three of them like a blanket. "We made it." But underneath that reassurance, uncertainty brewed. The lingering dread remained, and as the faint echoes of Caldwell's laughter danced in the corners of her mind, a second realization settled in. The shadows had been banished, but Lisa knew evil never goes quietly. It waits for a moment of weakness or doubt. "We need to leave," she urged suddenly, pulling back to look into their frightened eyes. "Now." Jake nodded, gripping her hand tightly. They moved cautiously toward the door, every creak of the floorboards a reminder that their escape might not be as easy as she wished. Yet she felt bolstered by the warmth of the book, a lifeline to pull her from the abyss. "Wait!" Emma exclaimed, her small voice cutting through the tension. "What about the others?" The weight of her daughter's words slammed into Lisa's chest like a truck. The other children, the ones who had whispered desperately for help. With a trembling heart, Lisa turned back toward the flickering shadows in the corners of the room, now eerily still. "Can we save them?" asked, eyes shimmering with fear. "We have to try," Lisa answered, steeling herself. "They deserve that chance." As they readied themselves, something shifted in the air. The book glimmered with a faint light, as if it understood her intentions.
She opened it again, hoping it would give her the power to reach those lost souls, to bind the darkness and return them to their families. "By the light that guides the brave," she murmured, her voice growing steadier. "By the bonds of love and family, I call to those trapped." Words poured forth from her, and the book responded, pulsing with energy. The air crackled, and as she spoke, wisps of shadows began to coalesce, swirling slowly, formulating shape and substance. "Help us!" The echoed voices lingered, a fusion of desperation and faint hope. "Just a little longer," Lisa pressed, heart racing. "I will not let you down." Jake's and Emma's tiny fingers tightened around hers. Together, they recited powerful phrases from the book as one, pouring their love and warmth into the spell, visualization flowing from their minds to the words escaping their lips. They envisioned brighter, safer worlds, the laughter of children ringing in their ears. There was a shattering cry as shadows burst free, shapes twisting and writhing before settling into soft orbs of glimmering light. The children they had fought for emerged, faces familiar yet haunted with pain. Lisa could hardly breathe, hope flooding her heart as the spectral figures wavered. "Stay with me," Lisa urged, extending her arms. "You're safe now. Come home." Slowly they floated closer, fragments of the shadows still clinging to them. With determination, Lisa summoned every ounce of strength she had, pushing back the darkness that threatened to engulf them once more. She needed to keep them focused, keep the spell alive. "Feel the love you had! Hold on to that! Let it guide you home!" she shouted, knowing the shadows would fight them every inch of the way. The children stepped forth, reaching for her. Lisa fought against the tide of darkness swirling around them, the shadows roaring in anger, threatening to pull them back. Caldwell's sinister voice echoed through the room, promising despair, warning of the futility of their efforts. But she would not yield. In that moment, fueled by primal instinct and fierce love, she pushed back with a force that felt daunting and primal. "You will not take them. They are not yours to hold." Light exploded outward, shattering the remnants of Caldwell's hold, illuminating every shadow in a blinding burst of radiance. The shapes of children melded with the luminosity, coalescing into something beautiful, something whole. And then, with a
final burst of energy, the shadows were stripped away entirely, leaving behind laughter, bright and pure. It was a sound filled with the joy of freedom, radiating like a beacon in the night. "Mom!" Jake cried, his face alight with wonder, as real children, visibly alive and safe, stood around them, their eyes sparkling with warmth. "It's over," Lisa breathed, tears of relief cascading down her cheeks. As the final remnants of darkness faded into the distance, a heavy silence enveloped the room.
There was an assurance now, a gentle caress of warmth that whispered of new beginnings. But just as they began to breathe freely, that mocking laughter returned, echoing in the room like a distant thunderclap. It sent chills down Lisa's spine. "Not quite yet," a voice hissed. Though the shadows had lifted, the evil was still out there, hidden in waiting, refusing to truly fade away. But as Lisa stood, holding her children close, she understood one undeniable truth. They had fought back, and where there was love, there was resilience. Totally resolute, she clasped the book tightly, sensing its power within her. They had faced down the storm, together, and she believed deep down that love could triumph over all. "Let's go home," she whispered, a smile forming as the warmth of hope surged anew. They had done this, they had changed the game, and as long as they stood united, they would face whatever darkness awaited. The shadows may linger in the edge of night, but now they walked forward with purpose, healing and resilience guiding their steps. And with each step they took, Lisa felt more and more assured. So, this was their moment, a fight won, a lesson learned. But they would be ready, always ready, as long as they held on to the light within. And as they stepped into the future together, a flicker caught Lisa's eye, something dark and fleeting, shuddering in its wake. But they were stronger than before. Together, they would find their way to banish the darkness for good. And the laughter of her children echoed through the night, a melody that would guide them home. Now, listen carefully. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm's hunger. Flood the comment section with your reactions and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And for the true fans, don't wait even one more second to share this story with at least 5 friends who need to see this epic finale. Your support matters.